Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Eddie O'Connor here. Now, he is a board-certified sports psychologist. We're going to get to know him and have a great conversation. So, Dr. Eddie, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh, thanks. Thanks very much. Well, first, quick correction. There isn't a board certification, but I am certified as a mental performance consultant through the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. With that out of the way, I am a sports psychologist, and I am super passionate about helping people overcome their obstacles to excellence. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, so when people are really struggling with performance anxiety, injury, I'm able to help them get over and begin to thrive once again and overcome those obstacles. But then I also work with others who are doing just fine and they want to be their very best, whether it be in athletics or performing arts or music, even sometimes just general life. And so there is a psychology to excellence that I also work with them on. And it has been my life's passion, and I don't think I'll ever retire.
Now, if I read correctly, you've worked with some pretty famous athletes.
Yeah, I've worked with everything from kids in high school through college, through national, international, professional. For confidentiality reasons, I can't really say it, but certain teams, for example, most recently was the Grand Rapids Gold, the G League basketball team for the Denver Nuggets, and just great experience there with high level athletes, really looking to achieve to be their very best on such a consistent basis and under pressure. So anyway, again, love the fun work.
Well, I am not an athlete, but recently I ended up getting a disease in my spine, which is kind of messed up my life where, I can't do a lot of the things I used to do. If I'm walking, I either have to use my cane, or if it's going to be a lot of walking, I have to use my wheelchair. Now, along that line, if you've come across someone who's, I don't know, maybe they've had a really bad injury, or in my case, a disease that incapacitates them, they can't do what they used to do, how do you approach that?
That's a fantastic question. In my other life, I spent 16 years as director and chief psychologist of the pain center at a hospital that was treating chronic pain and headaches and fibromyalgia. I've also worked with diabetes and obesity, so I really understand that. And one of the things that I enjoyed most about that was being able to bring this sports psychology, this performance psychology to that population, because you're working as hard as these elite athletes. Your challenges are just as hard. The goals might be different. The workouts might look different between rehabilitation and going to the Olympics, but your path is the same. I'm sure the negativity that showed up, the frustration, the anger, the denial, the lack of motivation to do what you have to do. You had a bunch of people pouring into you, telling you what to do, but they don't have to do it. And it kind of maybe makes us a little bit angry. Why did it happen to me? I mean, I could go on about how alike you and many others are, because it just gets down to what it means to be human, and how do we handle the fears, the doubts, and the anxieties that are there. So I would honestly work with you and others like that in very much the same way to enhance your performance.
Well, the one thing that aggravated me the most is those doctors that just want to throw pills at you. I can't stand that. Now, speaking from a place of addiction, I quit drinking, I quit doing drugs. So, I mean, I do have constant pain. And I told my pain care physician straight up, look, I am an addict. If you put me on opioids, I will abuse them. So that's something I don't want. Now they do have, these exercises and things like that. That's great, but that doesn't help my pain. Now, I don't know, have you ever heard of, they use, like in my case, buprenorphine instead of a regular opioid, which, are you familiar with that?
Not very, no.
Okay, buprenorphine is actually a pill form of methadone, which, they do treat addicts, but off label, it's for pain. I would say it's actually worked better than any pain medicine I've ever had in the past, but still there's that medication.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had worked in a multidisciplinary pain team, and that was maybe the biggest issue that we went through. Is when we are looking for the pills to cure or to fix. And I'm not going against that industry, like it has its role, but as you described, it's not for everybody, and there is a tremendous risk. I've talked to a lot of people with chronic pain who are angry because they either get addicted or they need more and more doses, and now they've got this additional problem on top of their chronic pain, and they don't feel the compassion from the doctors who they're like, "But you're the ones that put me on this. This wasn't my idea."
Right.
And so the biggest challenge in that population when I'm working is really understanding what we mean by chronic pain, the idea that you very unfortunately have something that's not likely to go away. And I get angry at the medical field when they're talking about curing chronic pain or getting rid of chronic pain or relief from your chronic pain. It's like you're setting people up for failure here when you're starting to get this battle of you fighting your chronic pain. Now, I don't mean when I say the word acceptance, I don't mean I've had people yell at me about that. Be like, I had back pain for 25 years. You don't think I'd accept it? And I get that. But what I mean is like there's this emotional aspect of given the reality that that's it, how do I interact with it? Am I continuing to fight it? I've worked with some people, unfortunately, their whole life is about going to physical therapy and one doctor appointment after the other. And I remember asking one woman, if you didn't have pain, what would you do? And she looked blankly at me and she's like, I don't know. She had lost complete contact with her church, with her family, with her recreation, with her purpose. It was just going to doctors. And she was one of my favorite people to work with because we were able to turn her life around in the sense of saying, well, imagine that if you didn't have it, what would your life be about? What do you miss? Who are you? And we explored that, connecting back to family and friends and other aspects. And that provided motivation to then be willing to feel the pain in service of living her best life. Now, I'd love to tell you that her pain went away and she went off and ran a 5K or something, and it didn't happen. But what she did do is reconnect. She started to, drop the idea that pain was her identity and her center, and she started to fill out her life. And that's the approach that we look at for chronic pain. What is important to you? How do you take committed actions towards that? And then how do we interact differently with all those thoughts and feelings that are holding us back and driving us to the life that we do not want to live?
Well, I was lucky in the sense that, first off, I had to retire. So I'm disabled now. And I could have easily just laid on the couch and vegetated and just, lack of better words, pissed my life away. But, I found purpose in doing this podcast and trying to help other people. So I get what you're saying. You just got to find a purpose in life.
Yeah. And it can be very hard to do. I mean, I imagine you didn't just all of a sudden decide and say with the utmost strength, oh, you know what? I'm disabled. I've had a lot of pain. All of this is really terrible. Let me do a podcast. That'll fix it. I'm sure it didn't fix it, but what it does do, again, given the unfortunate reality of it, is how do you make the best of that situation? And I have so much empathy for this process because sometimes people can think, but that doesn't make me feel better. And that's where we start to change the question, is that you're right. If we were going to be prioritizing doing things that make us feel good, all of us are going to have a terrible life because the world tends to sabotage that. And so that's another sort of core foundational belief that we structure our treatments and our worldview around. And that's like that idea of then again, who do I want to be? And what's the reality of the challenges that I have? And that's where that word willingness, or sometimes we're calling it more expansion, to kind of make that more a part of it. When we drop the struggle to fight the things that we can't control, so much of our life opens up, whether it's external circumstances or internal. Most of my clients that are struggling is because they're fighting with some reality. And sometimes that's that dark thinking that you have. Like I really specialize in performance anxiety. And my first session is letting people know that they should be as anxious, if not more anxious than they already are. And they're like, what? Like, this is problematic. I'm all like all this what if thinking. I'm like, there's overthinking. I can't play. I can't do this. And when I validate that, well, yeah, if it's athletes, you've got people trying to beat you, take your spot on the team. Every time you're going to win or lose. If you do make a mistake, you are going to be embarrassed. Your teammates are going to be upset. Your coach is going to be disappointed. Am I supposed to tell you that's not real and that's not going to happen? Have you played sport? That happens.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a pressure that drops. Like for the listeners out there, are you not supposed to be afraid of your health or how you're going to pay your bills, or are you going to lose your job, or what's going on with your spouse, or are your kids okay? Are we supposed to just adopt some positive attitude when we look around the world and we see horrible things happening all the time? So I encourage everybody to stop fighting the fact that your brain is actually quite healthy doing this and telling you, oh my gosh, there's stuff going on out there. Pay attention. And so, long story short, the quickest fix to that is if you can respect that you should be feeling these ways, upset about the things that you're upset about, worried about the things you're worried about, and then say, like you did, well, then what can I do? Like if I am worried about my job, well, then how do I work harder or better or smarter, get some mentoring, structure my life so I can be more alert, sleep a little bit more so my mind is clear. Like there's going to always be something that could move you in the direction that you want to go. Your anxiety is pointing usually at places where you could improve. And if you don't take it shamefully or that I'm doing something wrong, which is another challenge, it's also, again, your mind just trying to be like, hey, we want to be better than this. If we can just kind of let that background noise go on and say, well, then what can I do about it? And take small steps towards that, then you start to build your best life, no matter your circumstance.
You brought up two good points that I want to try to get to. One, whenever you talk to people around you about what you're going through, it seems like they try to talk you out of feeling the way you feel. What do you,
Yeah.
what do you do?
Yeah, like what's going on with that? Okay, here, yes. So big, beautiful question. Here's the challenge, and I'm mad at society for this too. This is just the way human beings are. But we have four basic human emotions: happy, sad, mad, and scared. Really smart people researched this just a number of years ago. And all the complicated emotions we have, you can boil it down biologically to these four. Well, let's go through this again. How many are positive? Well, happy. And then we've got sad, mad, and scared. So you mean to tell me that 75% of what I could possibly feel sucks? Excuse my language, but like is like 75% of what I could feel is negative and unpleasant, and I don't want to feel it. And so to your point, when you start talking about these things, as a culture, we've got such an intolerance of it that every time I'm scared and anxious, people tell me, oh, don't worry about it, you'll be okay. Every time I'm mad and angry, they say, oh, you need to calm down. Every time I'm sad, nobody can tolerate it. They want to cheer me up. And it invalidates 75% of our humanity.
Yes.
We cannot be intolerant of these three emotions. And we want to be able to create a safe space for people to feel them, because we don't want to be labeling them as anxiety and an anger problem and depression. Not to say that those things don't exist in the extremes, but we feel these things every day and we have every right to, and they're helpful. Anxiety, as I had mentioned already, is a warning saying that there's something that I care about, that there is a little bit of danger. Anxiety is not a problem in its essence. If I didn't worry about doing well in my job, I probably wouldn't prepare for it. If I didn't worry about my relationship, I'd be a jerk. If I didn't worry about having good grades, I wouldn't study. Sadness? My brother recently died. Like I'm feeling a lot of that now in recent weeks. And what is that? It's the flip side of love. It's the idea that I lost something of great value. And that sadness, what is it doing? It's in the past few weeks, it's helped me connect more strongly to my sister, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my friends. It's helped shift my priorities. The sadness, it hurts. I don't like it. And it's doing something for me. And the same thing with anger. We've got plenty of things to be angry about in this world. Are we not supposed to be upset about, you put in your issue, the injustice, the unfairness? But what do? We're not supposed to go into riots and act out. That's not a good use of the anger, but the anger itself, it often energizes us to make a change. If I'm angry about a loss that I had, for example, I am more motivated to work harder to do better the next time. I can use the anger in that way. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but I want to really kind of create for you around this idea that by all means, it's it. And if you want to share this podcast or this section with people to let them know, hey, I'm okay. I just want to let you know I'm a human being and I'm in that 75% of normality. And it'd be really nice if you could just sit with me in it. You don't have to fix it. That's the thing that drives me nuts. Because when you try to fix it, then we feel invalidated. Like we shouldn't be mad. We shouldn't be anxious. There's this narrow 25% of happiness that we need to live in. And it's wrong.
The biggest problem I had was when my little brother passed away. I drowned everything with the alcohol and the drugs, and I didn't give myself a chance to really feel. And if I had, I think I probably be handling it a lot better, even if it's been over 20 years.
Sorry.
But another point you brought up, speaking of performance anxiety, when it comes to these kind of injuries, whether it's emotional or the drugs that you take, performance with your spouse, or even just going to the bathroom is affected, and it's frustrating. How do you handle that?
Yeah, well, the biggest response to that and then is I'll give you kind of a quick outline. And for half of you, this might work right away. If it doesn't work, what I want to say is sometimes it takes training to do this. Like there are sometimes deeper, more complicated steps to interact differently with this. So I'll give you the quick answer, but know that, this might take some training. But the first one, as I said, is really settling into the lecture I just gave you about you should be worried about your performance. The human brain is a survival instinct that where turtles have their shells and skunks have their spray. As human beings, our survival instinct is a mind that consciously and unconsciously goes out and looks for things that could go wrong to warn us about it. And so the more we care about something, the more our mind is going to let us know things could go wrong. Now, let's pause here for a second because this, I think, is the most healing part of it. If you're anxious about something, I'm guessing it's because it's tied into something that you care something very much about. You don't want to be embarrassed, or it's something that you really invested a lot of time and energy into, but there's some type of real outcome that you greatly desire, or something that you really want to avoid. As a result of your caring, it becomes an automatic bigger threat. We don't tend to worry about the things that we don't care about, even if they're really serious, even if they're maybe even likely to happen, but we don't care. It's not going to be on our mind. This is why I like to tell a lot of my athletes, why am I working with the best athletes on the team, the ones who are trying to compete for state championships or get a D1 scholarship or go to the Olympics? Like, why am I always working with the people who have the greatest chances of winning? Like their chances of losing, like they're awesome. Why do I not work with the people who are terrible, who barely make the team, who are horrible at their sport? Why don't I have a practice that's full of people who are really bad and very likely to make mistakes? Well, because they probably don't care as much. So the first thing is that if you're anxious, I want to have you just question and say, am I anxious because there's something really bad that's very likely going to happen? Or is this really just something saying that I'm in the right spot? I should be anxious. I really care. And if you can change your relationship to that anxiety, almost like making it like a fire alarm, where there's not always a fire, but it's sort of a warning that you better check out, and then lean into your anxiety. And you're going to likely find one of two things. Either there is some threat, again, in sport, at your job. Hey, if I mess up, something bad's really going to happen. Then yes, let's validate that. That's true. That's a real threat. So what do you do about it? If my fire alarm's going off, I take the bacon that I'm burning off the stove, or I get a fire extinguisher, I put out the little fire. There's something normally that you can do. And if you take that action, not only is it going to help your anxiety, but it's going to move you closer towards what it is that you want to accomplish. And then for many of you, you're going to be like, well, I already did do that. I already studied. I am prepared. I did all the work for the project. I just want to be sure that the outcome's okay. And when you start to notice that you're just worried about the future and that you've done everything in the present that you can do, that's when you lean back into sort of the fire drill. The alarm's going off in the background and it's really annoying, but you and I still have a podcast to do. So we're just going to lean in here. And I wish if I started to struggle with the fire alarm to turn it off, our podcast would stop. But you can see I just got to talk louder and lean into the microphone, and you just work harder at it, and you know that you're safe. That fire alarm isn't a threat anymore. Your anxiety and what your head is warning, you've checked it out. It's safe. And I wish I could stop it for you, but it's your survival instinct. If I pulled a turtle out of its shell, it would die. I'm not going to get you to stop doing this. But once you can experience your anxiety in safety, then you double down on what I like to say, the win. What's important now? And right now, if I was anxious about my podcast performance and I'm worried about doing well or impressing your listeners, I just say, oh yeah, because I care about what I do and there's a message that I want to teach them. So what's important now is to look you in the eyes and answer your questions and have a great conversation back and forth, because that's all I can do. So I'm going to double down on that. That's what's important now. That's
This
the
may
question.
this might seem a little redundant, but and I'm pretty sure you've come across this before, but what about those guys who just feel totally emasculated because they can't do what they used to be able to do?
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, I validate that. I understand it. As I get older, I'm chipping away at that as my performance in athletics and other things is slowing down, and it hurts our identities. And that's really what it becomes, is I think a natural part of growth, whether it happens because of disability or some sudden accident where our identities are suddenly changed, or the gradual aging process, is we have to redefine who we are. For me, it was spiritually, I bring my spirit comes really into that. And I kind of realize that a lot of the material things in this world are going to fade away. And no matter what it is, whether it's money or power or good looks or, an income or a title, like I've just started to realize that everything has been short-lived. It's a very dangerous place. With my athletes, when they are an athlete, when they are a football player, those careers always end. And the best high-level athletes that have retired, I remember one guy, when they were like, well, what are you going to do when you don't have football? You're a football player. What are you going to do? He goes, no, 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 I'm not a football player. I play football. And now I'm going to do something else. And that was a great statement many years ago that I remembered. So for somebody like that who's feels emasculated, I'd be like, well, let's redefine what does masculine actually mean. I remember one gentleman I worked with always looked like a lumberjack, big, strong guy. Um, his wife was like half his size, maybe a third of his weight. Um, Always wore plaid, like I always thought of him like a lumberjack, big grizzly beard. Um, and I remember him telling me how hurt and embarrassed he was as he was walking out with like a bag of toilet paper while his wife had two big bags of groceries, and she's struggling to carry them, but because of his pain he couldn't carry them. And he says, and people look at me in the parking lot like, what the heck is going on with you? Like, what kind of, and he's like, stuff like this happens every day. And then he was really upset about not being able to teach his kid how to ride a bike. Like he couldn't get on the bike and show this or do that. Or, football was another thing. Like he's like, I want to be involved with dad. So what we did with him was I kept saying, well, so what do you want to do all these things for? And he talked about what the type of husband that he wanted to be and how he wanted to provide and how he wanted to teach his kids these things. I'm like, so how do we do it otherwise? And so with his wife, we talked about other ways that he could still be that leader, more in verbal ways or action ways or other, emotional provision that he could give. And with his kids, we just simply had him set out a chair, and he was able to play catch and go back and forth. And it wasn't the way that he had liked it. He wasn't completely happy. It didn't solve everything. He's like, yeah, but I still can't tackle him, or I can't do this. And we have empathy. And we say, no, you can't. And we don't want you to give up the entire idea that you can't teach your kid how to play football or ride a bike. And he did, again, not in the way he wanted, but he became that dad and that husband that he wanted to be.
It's got to be even worse when you already have depression, anxiety, in my case, PTSD, and then this happens and it's just compounded.
Yes.
And I feel bad for anyone that's not spiritual. If I didn't have God to lean on, I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a saving thing for me as well. It doesn't, I mean, pain is pain, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the struggle that I hear in your voice, and that I agree with you with all the layers of things that you're going through, that many of your listeners are going through. Psychology is not going to fix any of those. And that's where spirituality, or you find for yourself, if not, even if you're not spiritual, if you're atheist or something else, you still are going to have, whether it be a value, as I described with that other gentleman, they're still the person that you want to be. And that's an internal character that it's going to be hard. I'm not telling you this is easy. This isn't a quick fix. You're not going to get the answer in an hour here. But it is the guiding light of like, well, then who is it? And for me, as you had said, I put all these other things aside with God at my center, and I feel like he has created me to do this job. And so while I can't bench press as much as I used to, or run as fast as I used to, and do these other things, I still do it for fun, and it hurts, and I wish I was better, but I just kind of keep saying that never defined who I was. It's my character and it's my purpose in this world. And so let me keep doing that. Let me love my kids better. And I made a lot of mistake with them and my relationships, but there's always this opportunity every day, right? That you can still be that person that you want to be, or in our cases, that God designed us to be. And in some ways, that's stronger now in my life as I've lost these other things than it ever has been. And I wish I didn't go through it. I'm sure you wish you didn't go through all those other things. But in the end, if that's what brought both of us closer to God, we're winning, because there's eternity left.
Yeah, that's the sad part, is it took this for me to feel closer to God. But the good thing is my spiritual growth is a lot better. I do feel a lot closer to God. I'm praying every day, and now I'm teaching my grandson. So it's pretty cool when, I mean, he's only 4, but he knows before we go to sleep, Papa, what do we do? So we pray. He says, what do I pray for? I said, well, first you ask God for forgiveness for all the things that you did bad today, and then you thank him for everything that he's given you. And he says, thank you, God, for my monster trucks and all the people.
That's sweet. Hey, congrats to you for creating this culture and easing them into a real relationship. That's the one thing that I had missed. I kind of thought God was always kind of distant, but you're right, that idea of talking to him all the time about the little details. He's shown up in those ways that it wasn't just like a Santa Claus God or just somebody who's distant, but rather, I'm in this pain right now. What do you want, God? I believe that you're all good. And so this pain, this struggle that's in the Bible, there's a purpose to it. You want to shape me in some way. I am not Jesus-like, so how do I get closer to that? And I find that every time I think I'm doing a good job, something else then happens, and I realize that I could be better. So this is going to be a long path.
Do you do this only in person, or do you do it over Zoom?
I actually, my practice,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually it's almost always virtual. So I've got a HIPAA compliant one, so I do a lot of telehealth.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's been great because it can reach more athletes. There's not as much travel as they come back and forth. I have a lot less cancellations because people don't get stuck in traffic. So as much as I wasn't sure how it would work, COVID kind of pushed it a little bit, but decided not to go back because my clients have really liked it. And then I'm able to work with people all over the country now instead of just in my local town. So part of that mission of being able to serve more people has really been enhanced with the ability of this technology.
Yeah, definitely. And do you have a website?
I do. Easy to remember, dreddieoconnor.com, DREDDIEOCONNOR. And what I have on there is some free resources. You can click for Mental Toughness in 60 Seconds. It's my YouTube channel. So if you've got a short attention span, give you quick tips according to anxiety or sport parenting or this or that. You can check that out. And then I also have my Success Stories community, which is where I walk alongside you, a monthly coaching, but an online platform that if you like some of the things that I've talked about here, I've got online training for you where you can work through it at your own pace and convenience, but yet still have me as a once a month coaching call where we do meet just like this on a virtual platform. We've got some team meetings where you can meet with other members, and it's a great community to learn how to overcome these challenges and develop the mental and emotional skills to be your best self. There's athletes in there, but I also have people with health conditions, and I've got young, high school and college people, but then I've also got master's level. So it's a great community of quite a diversity. If you want to get better, it's a place to go. And so the link is on that website as well.
That's awesome. And do you have social media?
I do. Again, all the links are on the website there, but I'm at Sports Dr. Eddie on X and Facebook, and I used to be Twitter, but LinkedIn. Yeah, so I'm all over. I can be contacted in a host of ways.
Oh, awesome. Dr. Eddie, thank you so much for coming on my show today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I love what you're doing, and congratulations on the subject. It's a dark world, and I appreciate the light that you're bringing.
Thank you. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network